in The Kids Are All Right of simplifying and making it work?
Yeah, it's an interesting process. I think I'm the only person on this panel
Who's a director.
Well, who directed
In this
what they
case.
wrote. So it's interesting to write for yourself and think one step ahead to that. And then get into it as well with an actor and go through yet another phase of looking at the screenplay. Annette Bening was an extraordinary person to work with because she really loves the text. She really loves to get in there and talk about what's going on and how to, modify maybe the script before we get in and shoot. So there was stuff that we looked at that we, as she spoke about last night, kept paring back at dialogue and text to really get to the essence of what was happening in the moments and the scenes. But again, back to the original question, one of the great things about spending so much time and letting all this material marinate and really asking hard questions of it over the years was that we could distill it down to what the essence of it was. And while I knew that we had to be concerned with plot and how do we make 5, main characters have quick but complete arcs and intersect in a way that isn't episodic but is integrated into one complete whole, and then in that way become a bigger idea than itself, than the constituent parts, and have a theme and whatnot. I mean, these things become like kind of, bad math problems. They're very difficult. And so, at a certain point you hope that you kind of crack that to transcend that and get to something that's richer, that is thematic and transcendent. And I'm sure that's what we all kind of like are just, praying for at our altars of, whatever we do. So that was the process. And then finally, you're digging deeper and you're pushing away all the stuff that's superfluous and not necessary, and you're kind of cracking the character and the arc and how it intersects and the causality of each person's issue and dilemma and plot and whatnot. And then you get into that stuff, and all of a sudden you're kind of liberated because you realize, I don't need to say this. The story's saying it already, and it indeed less is more, and the audience is going to get it, and they're going to really appreciate not being told it, but being shown it through the actor, and in that way, I think, have a more visceral and identified experience of it. So for me as a writer-director, that's like the real joy of working a script to that core, and then handing it over to these consummate actors and letting them, transform it to this higher level. It's hard fucking work, but once you get there, and the pleasures are few and far between, but the pleasures are big, and I guess we're all kind of addicted to those pleasures, because when they come, they are transcendent. They're beautiful moments.
Well, Tarantino talks about the whole process of making a movie, that the editing is part of the writing as well. And you showed the movie at Sundance, and I enjoyed it and got a big kick out of it. And then I saw it again at the Los Angeles Film Festival, and it was funnier. What did you do?
Yeah, that was a big misery. Without going into the backstory of how this film actually got made, I was given you are now a serf, you have no voice, get this thing to Sundance, this is where we have to sell it, by a person who was not even in this country. So I spent the holidays of that year cutting away, and I said, I'm not going to be able to finish it, but I will get it into shape that you can show it, and buyer beware, and I'll do my best. We had a temp score, and we just cut to the last minute when I had to send it off and get it digitally reproduced to show it. And it was mortifying for me because, of course, you want to put a big fat disclaimer on your movie and say, this is not finished! Don't hold me accountable! And as anybody knows, and writers know from drafts and working closely with directors and being involved, I'm sure everybody here was really intimate with the whole project to the end. In the cutting room, every little beat and every little rhythm and everything that, whether it's, they talk about, oh, you need to lose 2 minutes. 2 minutes can be huge. It can make you dig the film or like feel like something was weird with that film, you know? I mean, it's a very odd thing. And so I felt like we didn't do our last pass. We did not finish the fine cut of this film where that rhythm is dead on and everything is working right.
The good news is that you did sell it, and you were able to take the time to finesse it, and it seems to have been a happy ending.
It was a happy ending, and that night was a happy ending, but I have to say it was surreal. I had one of those Annette Bening experiences where everything sort of stopped, and I'm watching this movie with a Sundance crowd for the first time, and everything's riding on this sail, or if the film's working, and people are laughing, and I have this horrified feeling like that the joke was on me somehow.
David,
weird.
Seidler, I'm sorry. David, you apparently, you showed the King's Speech at Toronto in one of those huge halls, and there was an extraordinary reaction. What was that like for you?
Yeah, that was, well, I disgraced myself. What had happened was we had shown it at Telluride, and it had been an extraordinary reaction, but these are very small venues, so yeah, it was great. Certainly immediately got a sense that we had the wind to our back. But in Toronto, for the first time, this huge auditorium, 2,000 seats. I was up in the first row of the balcony with Tom Hooper and Colin and Jeffrey and Elena and everyone. It's great, but it's in the dark, you see. And at the end, I realized something extraordinary is happening. First of all, before the end of the movie, at the end of the King's speech, the audience started applauding, and that was, you know, quite amazing. And then the film ended, and 2,000 people just stood up. And I was quite overwhelmed because I'll probably disgrace myself again just remembering it. I was so overwhelmed with the fact that I realized for the first time in my life as a stutterer, my voice had truly been heard, and it was a great emotional experience. So there I am blubbering, a lot of mucus, and they shone the spotlights on.
From the sublime to the ridiculous, Michael, how did you come up with Spanish Buzz?
Spanish Buzz was, it's a great example of why I feel like the collaborative process at Pixar is so great and so wonderful. I'm going to try and make it a short answer, but I think I wrote a first draft of Toy Story 3, and then we wrote maybe a second draft, and then we all decided, and then it was decided that all the people who had worked on the other Toy Story films were going to take another 2-day retreat, and everybody was going to go for 2 days. And this is me as a writer. I have 25 other people sitting around in an inn in Napa Valley, you know, for 2 days, helping me make my script better, which is unbelievable. I don't think it's like Nirvana. It's really like writer Nirvana. And
not fair.
Yeah. Well, and the other amazing thing is that they're not studio executives or development executives. These are other writer and directors. It's Brad Bird, it's Andrew Stanton, it's John Lasseter, it's Pete Docter, and they're all sitting around because they all worked on the, you know, with the exception of Brad, worked on the initial Toy Story film. So they're there to try and make it great. And it's just, until you get up to Pixar and see how labor intensive it is and how many people contribute, it's hard to even grasp. But to answer your question, I remember Andrew Stanton had written the treatment, and it was that Lotso switched Buzz into delusional mode, and Buzz became a prison guard. And that was a good sort of obstacle, because you want your closest ally or your most capable person to suddenly become an antagonist or to become an obstacle. But we're sitting there in the middle of like the second day, and I remember John Lasseter saying, you know, we've already seen deluded Buzz. We've already seen him switch back to deluded mode. I just wish there was something else. And that's like the smartest, I mean, that's the most important part of solving a problem, is just identifying it and saying, we've done this before, there needs to be something else. So then, everyone around the room, again, it's like 25 people start throwing out suggestions. It's fast motion Buzz, or slow motion Buzz, or vibrating Buzz, or whatever. And I remember I was sitting, Andrew was right next to me, and I said, Spanish Buzz to him. I just sort of whispered it to him, and Andrew went, Spanish Buzz! The whole room just erupted, and everyone started, like, ideas and jokes are like flying around the room, and you just knew at that moment that was going to go into the movie. And what's interesting though is that it takes 3 people to come up with that idea. It takes John to say there's something missing here that we need to fill in. It's me like having, you know, an idea which is sort of the least important part of the whole process, and then somebody else saying, out of 100 ideas, that's the idea that we're going to do. So that was in Spanish Buzz. Anyway.